Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Listen, I want you to really consider something as I continue to make these videos. You continue to study and to listen and to penetrate into the meaning and the actualization of your practice. Many of you, as I have come to these teachings through various organizations, various other human beings. Always remember that these practices, these teachings, are being transmitted to us via other human beings. We're all fallible creatures, right? And to the degree that our own experience validates the practice of Buddhism, we can be confused by our desperate need, and it's craving the validation of other human beings. If they're the single most manipulative thing, and it's the realms of, I know it's hard not to reduce it to just the one realm of anger, but it's so many things that we manipulate ourselves, right? And just to be amongst other humans is such a craving that we have that it often clouds our judgment, our perception of truth. We're willing to, yeah, that's true, but I can have, right? Possession. I can have friends. I can have other people. Me, love, give. It's our basic human condition. Now, it's not a bad thing. What Buddhism says is that we need to transform that urge, that craving, into a substance and a motivation and a manifestation of the best possible use of that craving. And that's our bodhisattva nature. Yes, I want to be among others of like mind. Yes, I want to be among other human beings, but it must bear the test of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. It must bear the test of we're all instantiating our Buddha-ness. Not shared recipes and shared come to my house and see my new couch and all of the regular attachments of humanness, which we base our relationships on as though that validates our being loved. That's the great human difficulty. And so I started out by saying we've all been through these different teachers and schools and organizations and so forth. And it would be easy, because it's a default for us humans to go, you're staying with that school? You're an idiot. That guy's bad, right? And we hear Nichiren talking about bad teachers. We hear Shakyamuni talking about bad evil teachers. And I'm not saying that they're not. What I want you to keep in mind is that even if you've had a close friends that you've known for many years, decades maybe, and the two of you are on, and this is the problem, we make good, bad, this side of the fence, that side of the fence. I hope that you're listening to Nichiren's words and Shakyamuni's words, and yes, those are identified, but it's not a simple duality. What it is an exigency for you to stay the course. Nichiren is sharing his own life and saying, look, I'm the votary of the Lotus Sutra in Japan. very singular voice. And yes, I have many of you who validate that I'm practicing Buddhism correctly, that this is exactly Shakyamuni's words, in the face of all these other teachers, whether you call them evil or bad or deluded or whatever. Yes, they are. But that's not the point. The point is that in our daily life, even the people closest to us, maybe family members, will go, well, I'm still staying with that bad teacher. I'm saying they won't call him a bad teacher. They'll say, but I like the comforts that I get there. And you must, number one, don't label them evil. Have tremendous compassion for those people because they're allowing their samsaric desires for this temporal, moment-to-moment sensation that they think they're being accepted and loved while they're betraying their own enlightenment. How sad is that? But you can't beat them up for it. You have to have conviction, and you should redouble your own efforts because evidently your influence isn't yet strong enough to convince them otherwise. And it may never be. But that shouldn't be accepted. You should know that this is the very thing that has to change in humanity in order for all of these wars and violence all over the world to start to diminish. We live in this age. Shakyamuni foretold it, Tendai knew it, Nichiren talks about it, he's in it with us. We're surrounded by bad information, bad teachers, misleading ideas. And the only thing that keeps those alive and propagating, like the wars, are the minds of those who can't see past it. You can. I can. And the fact that we see past it, we have to know that they too can see past it, but they're too afraid to make the effort. They don't have confidence. Therefore, you and I have to have more confidence, more resolve. We need, when we walk through a room, a town, a grocery store, whatever we do, or even in our own home, whatever we do, we need to exude that confidence. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Gosh, it's amazing, this life. How I perceive this life is everything. It's so precious to feel, understand, and see this way. That's what will convert people. And when it comes down to conversation to find out why, then you chant first and you discuss from a place of knowing. But first there has to be the attraction, the demonstrable, awake bodhisattva. That's the effort of this practice. Yeah, it ain't easy, but the payoff is so amazing. Stay focused on the prize. And so why do I say all that? Because this is what Nichiren is saying. He's saying, look at me, a fisherman's son. Spent my whole life studying this, and it took me a long time to get it. And in the meantime, I'm surrounded by people who don't get it. But the moment I talk to someone logically about how I see this, I get followers immediately. Most followers amongst the samurai, the very people who live every day in the ideas of life and death. The very instrument of authoritarianism. The people you would think the most unlikely Perhaps because they see the knife edge of life and death. No pun intended, but. And so when Nichiren talks sense to them, they're like, holy crap, yeah. They become, with all their heart, I get it. And they become some of his best disciples, yeah. They're not the only ones. There's many others. But amongst his followers, many government employed, if you will, instruments of death. When that starts to happen in your life, regardless of family members, long-standing friendships, whatever, when you see people that you talk to get inspired and start to practice, how validating is that? That's not just sharing a recipe. Yeah? So we continue, and now Nichiren shifts from talking about his own experience, and has shifted in the last video, talking about the stories of Shakyamuni captured in the Lotus Sutra and other sutras themselves. So he's saying, look, me, Nichiren, the votary in this polluted medieval Japan today, I can't let myself indulge in pity, and for myself, that is, right? Because I'm surrounded by people that are starving for this truth. I can't take a moment to go, let me recover and, no, I have to stand tall. I owe it to the people I know. And he's showing how Shakyamuni did the same thing. This is the history of Buddhism. People are, and it's the history of human beings, are constantly derailed by their neediness for immediate gratification. And you say, but Sifu Sylvain, when we sit in front of our Butsudan and chant Danmoku to our mandala and we open Gohonzon, it is immediate gratification. Yes, you're absolutely right. But it's a gratification of a larger state of being human. It isn't the gratification of somebody putting their hand on your shoulder or giving you a peck on the cheek or saying, hi, how you been? It should be. It is much more profound than that. But we have to retrain the way we experience this life, because we're accustomed, since babyhood, to think that the goal of life is to get a peck on a cheek and a smile from somebody without the profundity of what's behind that. If what's behind that is Buddha-ness, then great, have it. What a world to live toward. But we don't think that far. We just want that immediate, I got a peck on the cheek, everything is okay. Oh, by the way, slaughter. So what? I got my peck on the cheek. I mean, humans, very short-sighted. So I'm also saying, don't be depressed. Don't fault your friends or your family members or your whatever for falling prey to the human disease, samsara. Just redouble your efforts so that you can be enough of an influence into your environment that they start to come back. They see the golden light of what you are and embody as so impressive that they themselves, like flies or moths to the light, get drawn back into correct thinking. Not everyone is that strong. Some people are weak. Okay? Don't let that deter your practice. And hopefully the point I'm making is resonating, is that Nichiren is sharing this very struggle with us to be an example. To say, look, I don't walk on water. I'm struggling too. But look at the prize. It's so much larger. He continues. Thus, for example, the world-honored one cursed Devadatta by saying, "You are a fool who licks the spit of others." Sometimes it's appropriate to castigate a friend, a family member, right? Especially if they're getting in your face like Devadatta was. Right? He tried to kill or at least harm Shakyamuni. Hey, wake the hell up. What the hell do you think you're doing? It's not inappropriate. Sometimes we need a good rattle because we get so blinded, right? So yeah, there are moments when you are not so pretty, kind, flowery language. What would Nichiren call that? Shakubuku. You've got to break the disgusting misunderstandings and disbeliefs of other Buddhists when they confront you. If you don't, you're actually complicit in letting them have that power. No, strip it, identify it. Yeah, that's appropriate. It's not always pretty. This is a quote of Shakyamuni saying to Devadatta, "You're a fool who licks the spit of others." Devadatta felt as though a poison arrow had been shot into his breast, and he cried out in anger, declaring, quote, "Gautama is no Buddha. I am the eldest son of King Duryodhana, the elder brother of the Venerable Ananda, and kin to Gautama. No matter what kind of evil conduct I might be guilty of, he ought to admonish me in private for it." Right? He got hurt. He got demonstrated as inferior in front of his friends. But to publicly and outrageously accuse me of faults in front of this great assembly of human and heavenly beings, is this the behavior appropriate to a great man or a Buddha? How often have we heard that kind of rhetoric, right? Hear it every day. He continues, "He showed himself to be my enemy in the past when he stole the woman I intended to marry." And he has shown himself my enemy at this gathering today. From this day forward, I will look upon him as an arch enemy for lifetime after lifetime and age after age to come. End quote. Angry words, yeah. It didn't keep Shakyamuni from pointing out that he's a fool. He didn't attack him on girlfriends or embarrassment. See, key, listen here. He called him a fool who licks the spit of others, admonishing him about his practice, about his understanding of Buddhism. Right? Whereas all of the retort from Devadatta, spitting anger, rage, was about Buddha's human behavior that was unacceptable. You got to be able to identify the difference here. Nichiren goes on, "When we stop to consider, we note that of the great voice hearers, some were originally from non-Buddhist Brahmin families, or were leaders of various non-Buddhist orders who had converted kings to their teachings and were looked up to by their followers." Right? Some of our greatest nemeses, groups and organizations, bad teachers, are looked upon with great respect because the people who are looking upon them don't know any better. And so that gives those bad teachers an inflated version of an inflated idea of themselves. Even harder to get them to realize how mistaken they are in their views. Others were men of noble families or the possessors of great wealth, right? All these human cravings residing in the mind as some kind of proof of what? Of their database, their warehouse of identity. But they abandoned their exalted positions in life, lowered the banners of their pride, cast off everyday clothing, and wrapped their bodies in humble, dingy-hued robes of a Buddhist monk. This is the whole get rid of all your possessions things. It's not about getting rid of the possessions. It's about getting rid of your attachment to the possessions. But this doesn't get translated very well, does it? It's assumed knowledge. They threw away their white fly whisks, their bows and arrows, and took up solitary alms bowls, becoming like paupers and beggars and following Shakyamuni, the world-honored one. They had no dwellings to protect them from the wind and the rain, and very little in the way of food or clothing by which to sustain life. This they had to do in order to get rid of their warehouse of attachment. But it's a mental process. Yeah. Granted, it may be a mental process more difficult to attain without having to get rid of a bunch of stuff. We're all different karmic freight trains as they are, yeah? Moreover, all the people of the 5 regions and 4 seas of India were disciples or lay supporters of the non-Buddhist teachings, so that even the Buddha himself was on 9 occasions forced to suffer major hardships. Shakyamuni, the progenitor of Buddhism. Oops. I've got to plug this in. I hope this doesn't hurt the video. I forgot. How could I forget? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I lost a frame. Okay. Thus, for example, Devadatta hurled a great stone at Shakyamuni, and King Ajatashatru loosed a drunken elephant on him. Right? We've heard these stories. Failing to receive alms from King Agnitata, the Buddha was forced to eat horse fodder. And at a Brahmin city, he was offered stinking rice gruel. Again, Chincha, the daughter of a Brahmin, tying a bowl to her belly, claimed to be pregnant with his child. So when you're listening to these stories, I mean, you can listen to them and think, folklore, stories, examples, another soap opera on the television. But the power of these stories is to understand we have examples of this behavior in our own lives and the lives of those around us, in our families, in our friends. So this isn't some abstract. This is being laid out for you and I to realize these are the forces of samsara versus enlightenment that are constantly at work in our human lives, in the life of the universe. Right? Needless to say, the Buddha's disciples were likewise forced to suffer because they were following him, they were practicing. Frequent hardships. Thus, countless numbers of Shakya clan were killed by King Virudaka, and 10 million of the Buddha's followers were trampled to death by drunken elephants that were set upon them. Oh, this wasn't just a singular thing. Just because you are not Nichiren, that I am not Nichiren, does not protect us from the same kind of hardships, because it's not about Nichiren. It's not about Shakyamuni. It's about Buddhahood, that liberation from all of the avarice, greed, and warehouses and database of collected identity. We stand in stark contrast to that. And so the people who are attached have a hard time letting go. And they identify us as the very, what? The very thing that challenges all of their attachments. They don't want to lose them. And so they want to destroy us by whatever means, physically, politically. Yeah. So why is Nichiren exploring all of this? He's trying to get us to understand our resolve, our confidence in Buddha-ness is our defense, is our far beyond our beingness, is our greatest protection. Our greatest resolve is that is what should bring about compassion. The very size of it should almost overwhelm us. Always to the point, earthly desires are enlightenment, to take it to our Gohonzon mind so we can understand, so we can relax, so we can see that this is the turmoil of life, all life, and that there is something greater, an experience that says, I understand. You're young, my son. You're young, my daughter. You will come to know. Right? How many times did we hear that from our own parents and that we can see in others? One day you'll understand. You're only 16. You don't know. And as children, we hear, screw you, I don't know. Yeah? Stubborn? Yeah. Same with Buddhism, with enlightenment. People don't know what they need to know. We didn't. The nun Utpalavarna was killed by Devadatta. The venerable Kalodain was buried in horse dung, and the venerable Madgalyayana was beaten to death by members of a Brahmin group named Bamboo Staff. It's in the name, yeah. In addition, followers of the 6 non-Buddhist teachers banded together and slandered the Buddha before King Ajatasattu and King Prashnadajit, saying, Gautama is the most evil man in the whole land of Jambudvipa. Wherever he may be, the 3 calamities and 7 disasters rampage without fail. As the numerous rivers gather together in the great sea and the groves of trees cluster on great mountains, so crowds of evil men gather around Gautama. The men called Mahakashyapa, Shariputra, Madgalyayana, and the Subhuti are examples. All those who are born in human form should place loyalty to the sovereign and filial piety above all else. But these men have been so misled by Gautama that they disregard the lessons of their parents, abandon their families, and defying the commandments of the king, go to live in the mountain forests. They should be expelled from this country. It is because they are allowed to remain that the sun, moon, and stars manifest sinister phenomena and many strange happenings occur in the land. Couldn't be us. Couldn't be what our ire and anger and destruction and violence. Couldn't be that's causing problems. No. It's those guys with their talk of enlightenment. Ha! Let's kill them. Oh, my goodness. Again, as Nichiren would quote, if such anger and vitriol existed in the time of Shakyamuni, how worse could it be by now? Look around. The world is on fire right now. I mean, we can view from the comfort of our own positions wherever we are in the world and however much comfort you might feel. But the negativity is at hand. It's palpable, right? And it begins with the mind. if you are unsettled in your mind, then your life is unsettled, because that's the lens you look at life through. Hurry up and open that Gohonzon lens, yeah? So that you can see life from within it, and from 30,000 feet, and from 10 billion light years. The entirety of it makes these fires manageable, makes them obvious. Their fuel becomes obvious. How do you quell a fire? Namo Myo Renge Kyo. That's how. The voice hearers did not know how they could possibly bear such persecutions. People of learning, Hinianas. Then, as if to add to their hardship, the Buddha himself began to denounce them. Because sometimes you got to tell the kid he's screwing up. Pay attention. You're so full of yourself right now, you don't even hear what you're saying. Right? The job of a parent. They found it difficult to follow him. Now and then, hearing him condemn them repeatedly in great assemblies of human and heavenly beings, and not knowing how to behave, they only became more confused. But that's good. Confusion is a state of opportunity. Right? When they're railing on their own rhetoric without thinking of the energy they're putting forth, when you confuse them, there's a moment of reflection. On top of all this, they had to face the greatest hardship of all as revealed in the Vimalakirti Sutra. Once again with the Vimalakirti. When the Buddha addressed the voice hearers, saying, quote, "Those who give alms to you are cultivating for themselves no field of good fortune. They're supporting your terrible behavior. Those who give alms to you will fall into the three evil paths, lower realms, because that's where you're leading." End quote. These words were spoken when the Buddha was staying at Ambapali Garden. There, Brahma Chakra, the deities of the sun and moon, the four heavenly kings, and the heavenly gods of the threefold world, along with earthly gods, dragon gods, and other beings as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, had gathered in this great assembly when the Buddha said, in other words, with his enlightenment, his support was not from alms givers, weapon givers, right? A bunch of misled supporters for their egos. Shakyamuni's support was from the universe itself. Life, the engine of life. And with that behind him, behind you and I, he said, the heavenly and human beings who give alms to Subhuti and the other monks will fall into the three evil paths. Hell, hunger, and animality, right? After the heavenly and end quote. After the heavenly and human beings had heard this, would they be likely to go on giving alms to the voice hearers? In other words, would that behavior be supported, validated by life? It would almost appear as though the Buddha were deliberately attempting through his words to inflict death upon those who upheld the two vehicles, learning and realization, Hinianas. They were so stubborn that they knew more than he. It was his enlightenment he was teaching. Oh, but these students, they knew more than he. What story of teenage arrogance have you not heard these exact same scenarios? They're trying to break free of the parent without understanding that they had not achieved what the parent had achieved. Right? Same thing on a larger scale, but same thing. The more sensible persons in the assembly were no doubt repelled by the Buddha's actions. Oh, man, he sure is disciplining his children harshly. They needed discipline. Nevertheless, the voice hearers were able to obtain enough of the alms given to the Buddha to keep themselves alive, meager though the amount was. They still succeeded in robbing the true teachings of support as they got support for themselves. Look what we got. You didn't get it. Thieves, without even understanding that they were thieves, thinking themselves superior. This is the story of human beings, isn't it? When I consider the situation, Nichiren says, it occurs to me that if the Buddha had passed away after preaching the various sutras delivered in the first 40 and more years of his teaching life, and had not lived to preach the Lotus Sutra, the Myoho Renge-kyo, in the following 8 years, then who would have ever offered alms to these venerable ones? They would have been living in the realm of hungry spirits, never satiated, constantly at war. Again, look at the world today. But after more than 40 years of preaching various sutras, it was as though the bright spring sun emerged to melt the frigid ice of a great wind, arose to dispel the dew from countless grasses with one remark. In one moment, the Buddha wiped away his earlier pronouncements, saying, quote, I have not yet revealed the truth, end quote. Like a great wind scattering the dark clouds, or a full moon in the vast heavens, or the light sun shining in the blue sky, he proclaimed, quote, the world-honored one has long expounded his doctrines and now must reveal the truth, end quote. I've castigated you. I've demonstrated how to get to know your mind. I've tried to correct you when you went astray. But now I'm going to show you how you just simply do it. I'm no longer going to take responsibility for leading you to it. I'm going to give you the way to do it yourself. Whether you do or not, it's on you. It's not on me. The one great vehicle, right? With the brilliance of the sun or the brightness of the moon, it was revealed in the Lotus Sutra that Shariputra will become thus come one flower glow. And Mahakashyapa would become the thus come one light bright. Right? Until then, they were doomed. Your arrogance is such that you will never attain Buddhahood. That's how at fault you are. And then, ultimately, yes, you can do it. Anyone can. Even you. If he had told them that before, they would have assumed they already had it. They wouldn't have had something to work toward. Do you see the logic here? Because of the Lotus Sutra, the phoenix among scriptures, and the mirror that reflects the teachings. After the Buddha's passing, the voice hearers were looked up to by the human and heavenly supporters of Buddhism, just as the Buddha would be. But not until. Because each and every human being has Buddha in them. They simply need to experience it. That's Gohonzon. That paradigm shift. That, now I get it. Oh, I've been such an idiot. Renge. Anyone is capable of it. But they have to take it on as something to do. They have to own it. Confidence, attitude, intent. If the water is clear, then the moon will not fail to reflect it there. If the wind blows, then the grasses and trees will not fail to bow before it. And if there is a votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the sages and voice hearers should not fail to go to his side, though they might have to pass through a great fire or make their way through a great rock to do so. Though Mahakashyapa may be deep in meditation, he should not ignore the circumstances. Why does he do nothing about the situation? I am completely perplexed. Why wouldn't someone knowing the truth move toward it? Is this not the last 500-year period? Is the prediction that the Lotus Sutra will spread abroad mere nonsense? Is Nichiren not the votary of the Lotus Sutra, the Myoho Renge Kyo? Are the voice hearers protecting those who disparage the Lotus Sutra as a mere written teaching and who put forth their lies about what is called a special transmission? Oh, where have we heard that over and over again? Oh, we got the special transmission. We're the new Nichiren. You egomaniacal pisshead. If you want to be the new Nichiren, then don't. That's not what you achieve. You achieve Buddha-ness. You chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Not some other magical. Who are you to pretend that it's your Gohonzon? Huh? Gohonzon is the sentient mind experience Buddhahood. It's not yours. It's each and every one's. And this mandala is universal. This is Nichiren's embodiment of that very fact. You don't hold that like a carrot in front of people. First of all, it's already in them. It's innate. Any effort made to require that you do some test in order to that you're evil, you're getting in the way of their Buddhahood. You should disseminate this freely, just as Shakyamuni did, just as Nichiren did. Here, open your Buddha-ness. Experience Gohonzon mind. Do it. Well, if you give me this and that, and you go through these tests and challenges, maybe we'll give you one. F you. How arrogant are you? Just like Mahakashyapa and Ananda and the Shariputra and Devadatta. That's also what Nichiren is pointing out here. Don't let these people get in your way. Right? He says, though Mahakashyapa may be deep in meditation, he should not ignore the circumstances. Why does he do nothing about the situation? I am completely perplexed. Are they guarding those who write discard, close, and ignore and abandon, urging people to close the gate to the teachings of the Lotus Sutra and to throw away its scrolls, and who cause the ruin of the temples dedicated to the practice of Myoho Renge Kyo? Is that their goal? Because that's what they're doing. The various heavenly deities swore before Buddha to protect the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. But now that they see how fierce are the great persecutions of this muddied age, do they fail to come down? Can we blame the forces of the universe? Certainly not. But this is the dichotomy Nichiren is showing. How great is the human greed that it would stand in the way of the functions of the universe, the engine of life? The sun and moon are still up in the sky. Can't change that. Mount Sumero has not collapsed. The ocean tides ebb and flow, and the four seasons proceed in their normal order. Why then is there no sign of aid for the votary of the Lotus Sutra? Why is this so hard? My doubts grow deeper than ever. Have you ever been there? Look at Nichiren bearing himself completely open. The votary of the Lotus Sutra. I've had moments where I can't understand why the world is so fucked up. But he's speaking out of profound compassion, isn't he? He's not speaking out of anger. In the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha is shown predicting that various great bodhisattvas and heavenly and human beings will attain Buddhahood in the future. Guaranteed. But trying to realize such predictions is like trying to grasp the moon in the water, like mistaking the reflection for the actual object. It has the color and shape of the object, but not the reality, right? It's relatively easy, or it's easier to read this book, to have these videos, to talk about Buddhism, but to actually attain the Gohonzon mind, the glimpse of the life at work, the engine of life, being in it, Namo Myo Renge-kyo, to really experience it. It's hard to hang on to, isn't it? And yet we know, we taste, we feel, we see, we experience it when we chant. But it's like trying to grab the moon in the water, isn't it? That's what he's saying. Likewise, the Buddha would seem to be displaying profound kindness in making such predictions, but in fact, it is little kindness at all. Yeah, he makes it sound so easy. Just attain this clarity. Cool, let me have some. You can do it. I know you can. Here's the way. Just do this. Okay, I'm doing it. I'm doing it every day. And you know what? We take for granted how many wonderful things grow in our lives and change. But man, we're greedy. All we have to do is run into one big obstacle and we'll throw it all away. Screw this. Man, if I'm going to have to deal with this, shut up. Stop whining. Get back to work. I guarantee you, if you make it through that obstacle that you can't overcome, you will. And your life will change commensurately. You better remember how you got there. When the world-honored one had first attained enlightenment and had not yet begun to preach, more than 60 great bodhisattvas, including Dharma, Wisdom, Forest of Merits, Diamond Banner, and Diamond Storehouse, appeared from the various Buddha lands of the 10 directions and came before Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of the Teachings. There, at the request of the bodhisattvas, Chief Wise Moon of Deliverance, and others, they preached the doctrines of the 10 stages of security, the 10 stages of practice, the 10 stages of devotion, the 10 stages of development, so forth. The doctrines that these great bodhisattvas preached were not learned from Shakyamuni Buddha. At the time, Brahma and the other deities of the worlds of the 10 directions came together and preached the various teachings, but again, those were not what they had learned from Shakyamuni. These great bodhisattvas, deities, dragons, and others who appeared at the assembly described in the Flower Garland Sutra were beings who had dwelt in the inconceivable emancipation since before Shakyamuni Buddha was preaching. Perhaps they were disciples of Shakyamuni when he was carrying out bodhisattva practices in previous existences, because in India, they're all about reincarnation, right? Or perhaps they were disciples of previous Buddhas of the worlds of the 10 directions. In any event, they were not disciples of the Shakyamuni who first attained enlightenment in this world and expounded his lifetime teachings. So this is a story about Shakyamuni's enlightenment that says that the first confrontation he had was with a bunch of people who were going to convince him that they were right, that they already knew. Gosh, is this battle not... It's consistent, if nothing else. It was only when the Buddha set forth the 4 teachings in the Agama, the correct and equal, and the wisdom periods, that he finally acquired true disciples. And altogether, Although they were doctrines preached by the Buddha himself, they were not doctrines that revealed the true intention. He was working on them, transferring them from these old patterns and old ways of thinking that were mistaken and redirecting their minds. That's the early teachings. And when people got that that's what he was doing, they created their own sects of Buddhism. They thought they got it. They thought they learned the whole thing. It was just a transitional phase of teaching. But they thought they had gained what they had not, Hinayana. Why do I say this? Nichiren says. Because the specific and perfect teachings as set forth in the sutras of the correct and equal and the wisdom periods do not differ in meaning from the specific and perfect teachings as set forth in the Flower Garland Sutra. The specific and perfect teachings given in the Flower Garland Sutra are not the specific and perfect teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. They are the specific and perfect teachings of the Dharma wisdom and the other great bodhisattvas mentioned earlier. These great bodhisattvas may appear to most people to have been disciples of Shakyamuni Buddha, but in fact, it would appear to call them his teachers. The world-honored one listened to these bodhisattvas preaching, and after gaining wisdom and understanding, proceeded to set forth the specific and perfect teachings of the sutras of the correct and equal and wisdom periods. But these differ in no way from the specific and perfect teachings of the Flower Garland Sutra, not in word. Therefore, we know that these great bodhisattvas were the teachers of Shakyamuni. These bodhisattvas are mentioned in the Flower Garland Sutra, where they are called good friends. To call a person a good friend means that that person is neither one's teacher nor one's disciple, but one also in search of, aiming toward. The two types of teachings called Tripitaka and connecting teachings are offshoots of the specific and perfect teachings. Anyone who understands the specific and perfect teachings will invariably understand the Tripitaka and connecting teachings as well. I'll close with this one because we're going long again. A teacher is someone who teaches his disciples things that they did not previously know. For example, in the ages before the Buddha, the heavenly and human beings and followers of Brahmanism were all disciples of the two deities and the three ascetics. Though their doctrines branched off to form 95 different schools, these did not go beyond the views of the three ascetics. Shakyamuni, the Lord of Teachings, also studied these doctrines and for a time became a disciple of the Brahmanic teachers, right? 6 or 7 years. But after spending 12 years in various painful and comfortable practices, he came to understand the principles of suffering, emptiness, impermanence, and non-self. Therefore, he ceased to call himself a disciple of the Brahmanical teachings and instead proclaimed himself the possessor of a wisdom acquired from no teacher at all. Thus, in time, the human and heavenly beings came to look upon him as a great teacher. And we'll stop at this point, continue in the next. I hope, it is my hope, that in doing these videos, reading these Gosho out loud, trying to decipher the language in a way that seems more modernly conceivable, that you can see that all of this is written down in a compassionate form to identify, because that's what we do, with Nichiren, with Shakyamuni, with, ultimately, our own capacity to experience Buddha-ness. That's what we're all doing, and there's no reason we shouldn't. There are times in my practice when this was such a loud voice in my head that all I wanted to do was chant, till I couldn't chant anymore. I was hoarse. because you want to get it. What I might not have been aware of, and what we scarcely are, is that I was achieving it. That all those efforts they didn't fall flat. They were working. It's just that my karmic freight train occupied my mind more. That's what I need to shut up. That's what I need to redirect. I can't stop my karmic train unless I want to kill myself. Well, how stupid would that be? I need to take that karmic freight train of energy and mold it, move it toward this realization. Take every bit of energy I have and change its tendencies, move its conditions into Myoho Renge Kyo. And so with the two characters, Na, Mu, this is what I'm doing. Take my freight train of karma right now and mold it toward, instantiate it in this next moment as Buddha-ness. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for participating, for being on this journey, from liking and subscribing to do bodhisattva work, right? Getting electronic PDFs, so on and so forth, of these books, or print books from the lulu.com store. Any means of support, patrons, you're all patrons, just in different form. Buying books, sending donations, PayPal, Patreon. You guys are amazing. Keep your practice strong. Be convinced. Be resolute. Be completely in your life every moment of the day. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. What could be more exciting? Thank you. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye for now.